Okay,
Perfect.
so hello everyone. This is my first ICAAL, so I'm really excited to be here. I am a PhD student in linguistics at the University of Hawaii at Manoa. My research project here is on the sound changes of the Vietnamese. So let's get started here. So I want to begin with introducing my positionality. So I identify as a Viet Kieu. I was born in the US. I'm a Vietnamese American heritage speaker of Saigon Vietnamese. So I have extensive experience with Vietnamese language education as both a learner and an educator. My background training in linguistics has included sociolinguistics, sociophonetics. I'm relatively new to historical linguistics, especially for Austroasiatic. So there's a lot of reading I feel I need to catch up on. I'm also interested in looking at language change, hence my study here. So to give background for Vietnamese, which may feel redundant for many of you, but just in case I wanted to do this, Vietnamese belongs obviously to the Austroasiatic family, part of the Vedic branch. It is the national language of Vietnam. Vietnamese is known to have three prestige dialects or very salient regions, north, central, south. Standard form of Vietnamese that's used many domains within Vietnam is based on the Hanoi dialect. Vietnamese uses a Latin-based orthography, Quốc ngữ, which we see here already. Previous orthography was Chữ Nôm and also Hán tự, so Chinese character derived orthography that's no longer really used in Vietnam. Given Vietnam's geographic proximity to China, as well as a long history of 2,000 years of, I believe, domination, there's extensive contact with various Chinese language forms. So that's important for my analysis a little bit later. Want to give a little bit of background for Quốc ngữ, if you're not familiar with the writing system. So it was first devised by Catholic missionaries from Portugal, Italy, and France, and then further refined by Alexandre de Rode in the 17th century. So in my opinion, I find Quốc ngữ to be fairly close to phonemic, mostly one-to-one mapping of sounds with obvious notable exceptions. But I believe that this consistency, at least what I've seen in also previous research, has allowed for a tracing of sound change. So what is the relevance of this study? So we are all English speakers here who obviously are familiar with the Latin alphabet. The Vietnamese alphabet might not be fully transparent to English users. I also have done some preliminary sociolinguistic data collection for Vietnamese speakers, and its preliminary findings show that speakers value the sort of accuracy of mapping sound to what's written in orthography. So that notion of correctness is very important. I also believe that there's some sociolinguistic information encoded in variations of this particular D phoneme that I will be explaining more. So what is this D? This is perhaps one of the, if not the most opaque grapheme for learners of Vietnamese. So this D here, this plain D character is distinct from the bar D. The bar D is what we understand to be the typical D sound, with either dental, alveolar, plosive, or implosive. And also would like to note that this orthographic D can be phonemic either as the fricatives or the palatal yeah. And given that this is currently the standard variety, I will be following the direction of that particular form of this phoneme. So henceforth, we'll be discussing the Z phoneme. And I do recognize how tricky it is trying to talk about this D, but also talking about phonemes. Obviously, the orthography and phonemes are quite distinct things, but I believe in Vietnamese they're quite connected. So further notes on this phoneme. So prestige varieties of Vietnamese, I've mentioned three regions. So Hanoi represent the north, has this, but then in Hue for the central region and Saigon for the south, they both use palatal yeah. And so what's notable about this phoneme is that there is an orthographic merger of the three sounds depicted by D, G, I, and R, all as northern Z. In the south, at least for some speakers, D, G, I, and V are all realized as ya. Obviously, in maybe more careful context, a southern speaker might pronounce the V as va. But what they have in common is this D, G, I merger, which is interesting, as this D, G, I distinction still persists in other varieties of Vietnamese, which I'll get into. From my own experience, when I was learning Vietnamese in a Vietnamese school in California, I was taught this distinction between D and GI, so a ya, za split, even though maybe in our speaking practice, we wouldn't necessarily be so prescriptive about differentiating between ya and za, but for spelling exercises, obviously, ya, za distinction was accentuated. So for my methodology, so I am, I guess, early stages with this project. So I use a lot of previous data that was already been collected by other researchers. I did literature review to sort of see what data existed for these marginalized varieties of Vietnamese. I also wanted to see what reconstruction schemas already existed from Proto-Vietnamese to modern standard Vietnamese. My own experience with, I guess, learning languages that have a lot of contact with Chinese, so the Sino-Xenic languages, Korean, Japanese, and Vietnamese, had cognates that I thought could also enlighten what sound changes have potentially happened. So previous studies reconstructing Middle Vietnamese, following Ferluce, is spirantization hypothesis, where the letter D that's been depicted by de Rode in the 17th century is actually this voice interdental fricative the. And then using that and other reconstruction studies, we were able to reconstruct that the D was originally actually an alveolar or dental stop, da or da, so that this D has some sort of basis in reality, historically, potentially. So what I looked at was evidence from other varieties of those sounds that existed. So za is such, it's corresponding to other phones and other varieties of Vietnamese. So we see like this, looking at cognate data, a wide variety of phones that map onto za. So we have ya, a clustered ya, da, ta, the, ja, and ya. As noted in various studies regarding North Central region, including many of Mark's studies. The North Central region is a very special region in that it preserves a lot of archaic forms, including these phonemic distinctions that are believed to be very useful in historical reconstruction. So this study currently focuses on Vedic varieties, specifically varieties of Vietnamese. Should specify that here. So to give an overview of examples of these segment correspondences, we have data from, it was a Michaud et al. Study, included Michel Ferluce. From Phomnia, we have this mapping of the D phoneme to the alveopalatal ja. But then aside from that, we also see cognates that don't use that phone. We have the interdental the, we have the dental implosive the, we have ta, and also aspirated ta. So a wide variety of segments corresponding to this za phoneme that we have in more mainstream varieties. The Nguyen Din group is also infamous, also part of the North Central region, for having, again, these archaic forms, very conservative, that very heterodox, different from the mainstream varieties. So again, we have that initial cluster dia, but notably, we also have the palatal that we find in Hue and Saigon varieties, the ya for the za phoneme. So ya, for example, in Yu, of course, Gejai also has the archaic da for what we map onto for Hanoi ze. They might do something like de, a tone not necessarily corresponding. So those are the Vietnamese cognates that I was looking into, and I have a list that we'll show you later of more examples with the actual entire word forms. I also was thinking about Chinese loanwords, so borrowings from Middle Chinese, for example, this character yong in Mandarin or yong in Cantonese, which also is mapped to yong in Korean, yo in Japanese, and Southern Vietnamese yom, like in the compound yom. So I want to note that this ya sound, if someone could direct me to where a reconstruction also includes this ya sound, like that'd be very helpful. I've been trying to find, and I think there was more so of a focus on getting to the za sound. But I would take that the D grapheme would then correspond to this palatal approximant here. So just again, to reiterate this, given evidence from Tanjiang variety that also actually maintains this ya-za distinction. So in Tanjiang, the D represents ya and the GI represents za. And then again, we saw the Sino-Xenic cognate examples. And then again, with my own pedagogical background or my own educational background, where I learned that the D is ya and the GI was ja, actually the alveopalatal, no, post-alveolar fricative ja, but then in realization, more so the alveolar za. So I take ya to be sort of a more protoform leading to za. So as promised, here are some examples of cognates from North Central Vietnamese. And on the left-hand side, we have the orthographic representation of standard Vietnamese words with the transcription IPA in Hanoi Vietnamese. So note that all of these are presented with the alveolar fricative za. On the right, we have a wide range of corresponding segments. So what's going on here? This, I feel like, gives us a lot of room to think about what could have been sort of, I would say, the transition between Proto-Vedic to Middle Vietnamese to modern Standard Vietnamese. Notably, we have the palatal approximant in Gajai, which shows that this was existing at some point. Right. So just to clarify grapheme phoneme mapping. So again, we have the plain D, which we said is our main target for the study. The za sound. Again, it corresponds to Hue Saigon, Southern Ya, but also Phom Ya in that study done by Michaud and colleagues. They showed two different phones at least, or actually various phones, but notably these two phones that represent the za, that correspond to the za phoneme in Standard Vietnamese. Again, Tan Truong has a ya. For all varieties, the bar D is the stop da. And again, with discussion of this D grapheme, we should also discuss GI, which has merged in this prestige varieties, but is noticeably, it's distinctly still distinct in Tanjiang between D and GI. Also, just to note, G by itself is Ga, and then the R here representing Za in the northern variety. Maybe it's still distinct to actually the standard, but then in the Hui and Saigon variety is still Ra, and Tanjiang still Ra. And then not the focus of the study, but notably in the southwestern region, Ra merged with the G grapheme phoneme. So this is just to say, this is a new proposed evolution of D. So following other reconstructions of Proto-Vedic, the T or D that began this sound evolution was said to be either in initial or medial position. The ones in the initial position are what we have today as the stop da. The ones that were in medial position were spirantized following Fairloose, resulting in this sort of similar to interdental fricative the. And so at some point, it ended up as the northern or standard sa. And so I propose that there's some unknown in between that we could maybe reconstruct using the quote unquote heterodox dialects that did not have the same regular sound changes from Middle Vietnamese as did what we considered the prestige varieties. So for example, dia or ja as potential in-between segments. Tanjiang offers evidence that maybe ya was a precursor to za, and we also find ya in the southern variety. So this is what I take to be my sort of reconstruction map here. So a question might be, why not just go directly from the interdental to the alveolar, since the and za are quite close to each other in the mouth? So this hypothesis is extremely attractive because of how simple, plausible, Occam's razor. So this evidence shows that actually the D was pronounced ya before the Yaza merger, at least based on Tanjung variety. Moreover, it's believed that the GI was what was za, and then originating from ja. It's something that's also I've learned. The GI is the ja sound. And I'd still say this is phonetically motivated. So given evidence from Tanjung in Chinese, I'd say was again, the becomes ya, sha becomes za. And then we can say that from da or da to the to ya to za, kind of convoluted, but possible. Another possible unattested path from cognitive evidence in Din province varieties is from da da to the to potentially ya, the dental palatal cluster, which could potentially have been reduced to the palatal ya, and then finally to our standard za. Thank you. And maybe the final alternative based on free variation allophones and Fomnia, which was the, so actually, I don't know if I specified, the Fomnia preserved the Middle Vietnamese the, so, and that form is also said to be marginalized as considered maybe a ridiculous form. So given that those allophones, so da da could have been come Middle Vietnamese the, given the evidence of the allophone in Fomnia could become ja, then to ya, then to za. Given that the alveopalatals between the interdental and the palatal, I'd say that's also phonetically possible. So I'd like to say that there's a lot of work that still needs to go into this. So for future work, I would want to stay up to date, obviously, on other reconstruction research, looking at what our colleagues are doing here, amazing work. I also want to look at more dialectal data through review, but also through language documentation, which I hope to contribute to. Would like to compile a larger data set using what's already out there, but also adding to it, looking also more broadly at Vedic and Austroasiatic to better inform my hypothesis. For me, again, I mentioned I do sociolinguistics, so I take this as sort of related to my perceptual dialectology study. So I take sociolinguistics and this historical sound change to be quite connected to each other, especially with sociophonetics, thinking about perception, production, what's being influenced, and what factors are kind of being indexed when we produce, maybe, for example, the za versus a ya, which goes into this idea I have for an indexical field of za production for Southern speakers. I've definitely seen Southerners use the za, and I'm wondering why they're doing that. And then looking at dialectal variation of za and ya. So here are my references. You see a lot of mark and thank you.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Nathan, for this nice talk. We already have a comment from Paul, who says Nguyen once told me that he thought that D was a breathy D in Middle Vietnamese that fricated later.
So, okay, I'm gonna have to look. Does Nguyen have any? I'm assuming some paper that talks about this. So I will try and look into that. Thank you.
Okay, then we have another. Oh, sorry. No, go ahead.
Oh, yes. Oh, I was going to address maybe Zhang's question here.
Okay.
Yeah. So I understand you work on sociophonetics, but do you have some descriptions of the D variations? So I don't have any audio data, or I wasn't able to access any audio data, but that's a very good next step, is to use Pratt to see those differences. So I will definitely take that into account. Thank you, Zhang.
Okay, then Nguyen Bui wants to say something. Please go ahead. We cannot hear you.
So Nguyen, okay. No worries.
Oh, okay, no worries. We still have a lot of time for further comments and questions.
Thank you, Zan. Okay. Oh, okay. Yes.
Okay.
I will download that.
More questions or comments?
Mm-hmm. definitely will try and show more examples of the cognates. I did show a few, but I also, that's something else I would like to do is more quantitative analysis of these different realizations of that phoneme and how it's mapped into other varieties. But yeah, thank you.
We still have more time left.
Hopefully this will be like a buffer, just in case someone goes over again.
Okay, no, that doesn't seem to be the case. So let's thank Nathan again for this very nice talk. Thanks, Nathan.
Thank you.